Ever since I was a teenager, I always wanted to visit Borneo. You know, this miracle island with the monkeys, the lush jungles, the nature, this unachievable dream. Maybe because we see it in games or movies, but it was there in my mind. But as I got older, my love sipped away and I lost complete interest because, let's face it, by now, all the orangutans are dead and the forest was destroyed so we could have sweet Nutella. Let's fast forward to 2023. I buy tickets to Malaysia and I have no real plans. I just want to visit some islands and go scuba diving. I do some research and there are quite a few cool islands to check out. There is also this legendary island called Sipadan, the stuff of dreams, where all oceans meet and you can see all marine life there is to see. I'm not really sure where it is, but it's in Malaysia, so yeah, why not? I really want to go there. And then I see how remote it is and how much it costs. So naturally, I adjust my plans to visit the islands nearby Peninsula Malaysia. But life had different plans for me. December is the monsoon season and most of those islands are closed off for tourism. So the only real alternative left was Sipadan in Borneo. I wasn't really inclined to go, gonna be honest with you. It's far, expensive, but my girlfriend told me I should go and after a while, there I was. I mean, around there. You can't really stay in Sipadan. You only go there for day trips, but more into that later. All the adventure starts at Semporna, a small and very rough town. It is filled with Chinese tourists, backpackers like me, poverty and trash, a lot of trash. Some come for diving, but most people go to fancy resorts in a Maldives-like environment. But thankfully, we don't have to stay in Semporna for long. We soon jump on a boat and set off to a new island, Mabul, where I resided for 5 days. And from the moment I landed at the airport until a couple of days later in Mabul, I was dazzled by this completely different environment, almost like another dimension. The jungles of Borneo, the locals, the trash and foul smell of Semporna, the villages of sea gypsies in between Mabul and Semporna, like people actually living in the ocean. I could literally see myself inside a David Attenborough documentary. By my surprise, you can tell by now that I'm an ignorant who didn't do any research. But, well, can't have it everything, right? All I knew was Sipadan is a world-class diving site. Many people rating it the best. And after an hour and something on a boat, we finally reached Mabul. It kind of resembles the Maldives, but not really. It's a complicated environment. My dive resort looks really cool. It's nothing fancy, because I definitely can't afford it, but good enough for diving holidays. And we don't stay idle for long. Almost like straight away, maybe 30 minutes later, we're already doing our first dive. And what a good surprise in that regard Mabul was. To be honest, I wasn't expecting much for it, since most people come here for Sipadan. But Mabul is incredible too, and much cheaper, especially if you're into tiny things. I always liked it big, if you know what I mean. But during this trip, I finally understood why so many people love macro and muck diving. It's almost like therapy. You're there, observing that unassuming landscape. Not much to see, but your eyes get the glimpse of something, maybe some movement. And then you slowly start to realize that this supposedly barren environment has actually a lot going on. All you have to do is stop and pay attention to it. And after a while, that empty space is quite busy. So yeah, you can expect to see a lot of nudie branches. But not only small creatures, you're also gonna see some huge green turtles, almost like a dinosaur. Eels, octopus, cuttlefish, huge schools of jack. I don't know, even some very dangerous sea snakes that I got too close for my own good. Mabul is definitely a really good diving spot. Trust me. I guarantee that your very first day there, you're gonna be numbed by the sheer beauty of nature, the ugly side of pollution, the inequalities of life, how some really rich people can be so close to a lot of really poor people, and also the crazy beautiful sunsets of Borneo. They are out of this world. A new day dawns, and today we're visiting this so-called paradise they call Sipadan. This tiny island, in which you could probably circle around walking in 5 minutes if they would only let you do so, is not the easiest to visit. The Malaysian country keeps a really tight control over the island, and only a few hundred something people are allowed to visit every day, regardless if you're diving or not. In the past, it has been the center of a lot of controversy. In the early phases, there was some terrorism activity here, some people were kidnapped, and because of that, there was a resort that was closed down. Now you can only visit the island as a day trip. You're not allowed to stay there for a long time, and there's a very limited portion of the island which you can walk. But you're not there for walking, right? You come to Sipadan for what's below the surface. And it is amazing. As good as it gets. If you've been diving for a while, you know that nature doesn't follow our schedule. The ocean is not an aquarium. Sometimes a dive site might be amazing. The next day, it might be boring, nothing there. But in Sipadan, regardless of the day, you're gonna have a good time. The visibility is crazy good. The corals are so good, so beautiful and colorful. There's a huge diversity of fish, lots of different types of turtles, types of sharks, lots of big things. You might not see what you wanted to see when you came here, or all the crazy things they advertise when they talk about Sipadan. And it won't be bad, that is for sure. I have to admit that I was a little bit disappointed when I first dove there, because all the things we hear, the videos we see, people fantasize it so much that we create this unachievable hype in our head. And when you're there, reality might not meet your expectations. But it's been more than 2 months now. And during my holidays, I also had the opportunity to dive throughout many different locations and countries. And with the proper time to digest everything you see, you realize that Sipadan is really good. Really good. I think the main problem here is how hard the Malaysian government make it for you to dive there. And when you compare it with other dive locations around like Mabul or other islands like Siamil, it might not be that worth it. Sure, it would be great, but you're not missing out too much. You could argue that what the Malaysian government is doing is great. You know, they are preserving the environment, saving this island. But I'm not sure if that's the case. Because when you see the other islands around, they surely have seen better days in the past. And I can't help but think that what the Malaysian government is doing here, they're not really protecting the island. They're just making sure they have this tourist destination catered to really rich people. But back to my dives, it was good. You see huge schools of jackfish, lots of turtles, all different sorts of fish that make you think you're in an aquarium, some barracuda here and there. The water temperature was amazing, visibility was great as you can see, and just very enjoyable in general. I loved it.
Wonderful. I was chosen by the fish.
In the past, people could dive 3 times there and then head back to their resorts in Mabul or Semporna. But I think since early last year, the government changed the rules, and now you're only allowed to do 2 dives in Sipadan. The third dive we do on our way back to Mabul, and it's great as well. It's amazing. And once you get back to Mabul, and you already got used to the environment and diving, and you finally have a chance to catch your breath, there's an opportunity to get into contact with the local population. You see them all the time in the outskirts of your hotel or resort. They are not allowed to enter the premises, but they are always there. And you can also visit their village, which I did. I was shocked by how nice they were to me. I really don't know why, but everyone was saying hello and smiling to me, from kids to really old people. Maybe they just don't get many visitors? I don't know. But just in case you're curious, the bajau, often known as the sea gypsies or sea nomads, are a semi-nomadic ethnic group who live on the seas around Sulawesi, Indonesia, and the islands of the coast of Borneo, which they are known as the bajau lot. They start to free dive and fish from a very early age, and not for leisure. Their substance comes from the sea, and they lack many of the things we take for granted in life. Living in the sea might sound adventurous and romantic, but it's not an easy life. Not at all. If you Google or watch any documentary about them, people always praise how brave and wonderful people they are, but completely ignore the blatant poverty they live in. All they really care about is how many views or likes they will get out of this. In the meantime, when you walk through Semporna, you'll see lots of their kids begging for money. When you go dive in nearby islands like Mabul or Sipadan, you see families begging for food. It's heartbreaking, not fun at all. It makes you extra sad when you see all this poverty next to all those luxurious resorts. And perhaps this hard life is changing their way of living. Even though most of them only go ashore for business like selling fish, collecting fresh water or wood, a small percentage is slowly leaving this nomadic life behind. Like I mentioned before, I could see lots of them settled in Semporna and Mabul. And it makes me think, what happens to those finally living on land? Are they still stateless? Because most of them are not afforded citizenship status by Malaysia, the Philippines, or Indonesia, as they have been deemed to reside in the waters of the Sulu and Celebes Sea, and not strictly on land owned by any of the countries. As you can imagine, their infrastructure, if we can call it infrastructure, is quite limited. Most of the children do not have access to a formal education system, as it is a requirement for students to have birth certificates and for both their parents to possess national identity cards. The lack of education also brings another unpleasant subject to my mind: the trash. There is no way around it. Semporna and Mabul are covered in trash. It's absurd. I can only imagine how magical those places could have been in the past. But nowadays, it's far from glorious. Of course, if you're staying in a fancy resort where you pay $1,000 plus per day, you won't see trash in the shore of the resort. But if you look a little bit further or the other way around, the trash will be there. I can only speak about the Malaysian part of Borneo, but the government is making a pretty decent amount of money off tourism here. In order to dive in Sipadan, you have to pay a lot of hefty fees. Conservation fees, they say. But where is all this money going to? Clearly not around Sipadan. And it's hard to understand how they can be so cautious and zealous with this specific island, but completely ignore the area around. I sincerely hope that the Malaysian government take better care of Mabul and Semporna in the future. They are in a really lousy state. Hopefully they will provide more education to the bajau as well. Perhaps run some campaigns to get rid of all the trash. Make it advantageous for them somehow. How can they achieve this? I have no fucking clue. But they should at least try. Yeah. That was my holidays in Sipadan. I spent 5 days there. Initially, this video wasn't supposed to be an in-depth guide of how to reach and dive there, but since I'm here, I might as well help you. So first things first, you wanna fly to Tawau Airport in the province of Sabah, Borneo. The airport stays in between Tawau and Semporna, so when you're booking accommodation, just be careful. Even though it has Tawau in the name, I recommend you to book accommodation in Semporna because it's closer to the dock where you're gonna head off. The distance between Tawau and Semporna is quite far. You're gonna be 2 hours in a taxi. And I really recommend you book your dives before going there because how it works. The Malaysian government will only let, if I'm not mistaken, 136 people go to Sipadan each day. And those openings, they are divided among the different resorts and hotels there. The bigger the resort, more openings they will have. Usually it's like that. So yeah, you have to book before so you make sure you have the chance to visit those dive sites. When you're booking it, you're gonna see that Sipadan is much more expensive than Mabul and Silamil, but they're just as nice, so make sure you visit those. You don't have to book more than 1 day for Sipadan. If you have the money and time, of course go for it, but if you're quite limited on your budget, don't feel sad. You're gonna see enough, so 1 day there will be more than enough. Make sure you dive plenty in Mabul, Siamil and all the sites, because much cheaper, just as fun. I really recommend you stay there for more than 3 days because as you can tell, it's quite a remote area. It's a lot of effort to reach this part of the world. The longer you can stay there, the better. 5 days ideal. Understand that it might get expensive, so just save some money. I wouldn't recommend if you're not diving. Like the resorts, if you're not into diving, they're really expensive, and I think you can get something much better elsewhere. You know, when you go there, it's either for diving or to see the bajau, because it's crazy. Like you feel like you're in Discovery Channel. When I was there, I stayed with Scuba Junkie Dive Resort. They are really good. I really recommend them. If you do some research, their name constantly pops up, and that's for a reason. They are affordable, really nice. The staff is great. The local divers are super good. The foreign divers are amazing as well. Everyone is nice. They treat you well. They want to make sure you're having a good time. Their food as well, I love it. I am vegetarian, so I can be picky when I'm traveling because sometimes people forget that we have to get our source of protein, but all the meals you will get plenty of it. Like you have tempeh and tofu all the time. The desserts are really good as well. There's always snacks for you to eat, and if you want you can buy ice cream and beers, and it's just good. The rooms, nothing fancy, but very tidy and clean. I didn't have any issues at all. It was amazing. So in a summary, you fly to Tawau Airport, you go to Semporna in a taxi, and then you're gonna pick up you on a boat, and you're gonna be there diving, enjoying life, and that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a different occasion. Bye bye.